We're live. Amy, thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me, Victor. It's great to be here.
I'm going back and looking through my repertoire, my all the episodes I've produced, and I think this is the first transatlantic one. I'm based in Canada. I've had U.S. guests, but you are the first one. I mean, just outside of those countries. So we're talking to you today from Dublin, Ireland, right?
Cork, actually.
Cork. Oh,
Yeah,
geez, Cork.
South
Okay, I got that.
Ireland.
South
Yeah,
of
no, yeah.
Ireland,
South of Ireland. Yeah, southwest.
Southwest Ireland. Okay. Well, we've got a lot to jump into today. So thank you for being generous with your time because I know it's daytime for me here. It's prime time where you are right now. So you're the founder and you're also the CEO of Up Level Coaching and Consulting. So take us through what your role there entails and just what the company's all about.
Yeah. So I suppose it requires me to maybe go back into my background. So I've been in sales for God. It's been 20 years now, which was revealing my age. And
I'm
I've
with
also
you on that. So we're both revealing our ages right there.
there you go. So I have been a coach for about 7 years, and it was something that I got into through corporate roles that I had had in. I think at the time I was an account executive, and so I started doing a coach training program in Toronto, and I was just so blown away by the people that I met there, what you work on, the coaching psychology, the way that you think about change and growth and learning. And I was just so drawn to it. So I ended up doing all of my, coach training in Toronto. I just finished a master's degree in coaching as well that I did in a university here, called UCC, University College Cork. And with that, because I finished up with Twitter/X. It's so hard to call it X. Like
Well,
even now,
because
I've
you
worked
still,
there.
but but they're still called tweets. They're not called like X's. So it's like the
Tweets,
correlation
tweets.
isn't there anymore.
I don't know. Like every literal time I talk about it, I say Twitter/X. Like it just becomes that in my mind. And like, it's funny because when I did work there when it was X and, I tried to kind of get into the lingo, but it just never stuck. Like it just never did. So anyway, I finished there about a year and a bit ago. So it would have been last February. And the perfect natural thing for me to do would be to work on like my passion area, which is coaching. So what I do now is I do a combination of executive coaching, which is working one-on-one with people. I also do group coaching on a variety of different topics that, people might be interested in. And I also am just right now developing a framework for sales coaching as well. So kind of bringing in my background in sales, the amount of time that I've worked in sales in various different roles, and bringing that together with my coaching to form, a framework around that. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
We're going to come back to that later, but as always, we start from the beginning. So you are from Dublin, even though I got it wrong at the beginning. You're in Cork right now, but
Yes.
Dublin, born and raised?
Born and partly raised in Dublin. So born in Dublin, then moved to Limerick, went to college in Limerick, moved back to Dublin. So spent a few years there, started my career in magazine advertising way back when, and then moved to Toronto in 2011. And we also moved in February, which was like, in hindsight, the worst decision ever because we were not prepared. No one, I don't know, did we, like, we had the internet, but like, I just did not know anything. I know, I'm like, am I that? There was a time when we didn't, but like, I genuinely did not know what to expect for the winter. And it was a real shock arriving in Toronto it was like the very last day, I think, of January 2011 when we arrived. And yeah, yeah. So
So
all your
you didn't have
crazy.
snow growing up in Ireland, did you? Or if you did, it was probably very light, very disruptive, and
Maybe
very
once in
short.
my whole life, actually.
Really? Okay.
Yes. Like, as in, like, I lived in London for a year when I was a child, and I know that there was snow there, but I don't know if there was ever snow in Ireland. Maybe once in my life, and never, even going down to like minus temperatures would be rare, like very, very rare. So it was a real shock. And then, of course, on top of that, like looking for jobs and looking for places to live, and yeah, it was wild when I think back. What a time to move to Canada.
Give us more insight into what life was like in Ireland before you made the jump to Canada. Like, what was
Yeah.
keeping you busy? What were your hobbies or interests?
Well, so at the time, I was working in magazine advertising and very ambitious, very driven, really wanting to succeed, really climb that kind of corporate ladder. I've always been a reader, like really, really into reading. I just devour the books, tons of different topics. I don't have one kind of topic that I stick to. This always surprises people for some reason whenever they hear this about me, but I'm a huge gamer. I really, really love gaming.
Really?
Yes.
Really? So
Yes.
were you like you queued up outside your favorite store getting the PS5 when it dropped?
Oh, yeah. I wasn't queued up, but I was online. Like, I
You were
had it.
online.
Yeah, so the PS5, I got it when I moved home actually to Ireland in 2021, I believe it was. And I literally signed up to the physical shops that are selling, like, what is it even called? Like, I'm trying to remember where I actually bought it, like GameStop or something like that. But I signed up to be on a wait list physically. I went into the store to be like, put my name down. I need the PS5. And I got one. I actually got one that year, which is very rare. It was obviously at the time there was no PS5s to be found. So I was very lucky. But yeah, so like super into gaming, super into reading real nerdy stuff. Love reality TV, love anything like that. Love Island, obsessed. Just a bit of a laugh. Like I like laughing. I like playfulness. I like not taking myself too seriously and love increasingly as I get older, I find myself really wanting to be outdoors a lot. So, cycling or just walking with my dog or just being outside. Like I really feel it in my body when I do that. So yeah, those are the kind of hobbies that I would have been into back in the day.
Spending more time outside, that seems like the opposite of what a gamer would do.
I know, but it's so necessary because when you
It
are
is.
gaming, like I definitely have a point, and I know this about myself now, where if there's a new game and I'm obsessed with it and I play it, and I don't get as much, of a chance now because I have a 6-year-old, so it's different, and he won't let me on the PS5 anymore, like it is now.
Nice.
But when you get into a game, like so now I'm playing on my Mac. I could definitely and easily spend 4 to 5 hours, but I get this sense, like I just feel it that I need to be outside. I don't know if it's just getting older, but I'm starting to pay more attention to my body. And whereas before I would have just done 24 hours, now it's like, nope, I don't know. Maybe this is just the new adulting or something.
Okay, so I don't wanna spend I wanna turn this into a Amy Loves Gaming podcast, but
Yeah.
what was your first gaming system, and what is the most recent game that you're playing right now?
The earliest system I can remember was the like the SNES, like the Super Nintendo system. Like, so back then, like early Mario games. That was the first system I had. I had a first PlayStation, so the number one.
That's an
And
underrated system. Like, I
yeah,
know it was 32-bit and pixelated, but those games were fun. Like, you could play
yeah.
for hours on those
Getaway
games.
was my big game at the time. Like we used to play that a lot, I remember. And my most recent game that I've played, well, I'm playing right now Northgard, which is on it's on PC. I don't think it's a console game. But I'm really big into Northgard at the moment. I played Baldur's Gate recently. I thought that was beautiful. Um yeah, any of the big ones that come out. I've just watched The Last of Us on TV. I obviously played both of those games. And so for anyone that's listening, I'm not going to spoil anything because it's such a divisive, game slash TV show, but that was a powerful one that I don't think I'll ever forget. And then my favorite probably would be I loved the God of War 2018 version. Loved it.
Gotcha, okay.
The story. Like I think they should probably make a TV show about it.
I'm sure Amazon will pick it up, and instead of making a movie, they'll turn it into a TV show. They probably will. They're doing it with everything right now.
Yeah, whoever,
What
Netflix, I mean, whatever.
Well, I mean, I follow an entertainment lawyer, and I'll send you a link to his profile on LinkedIn, and he is a big advocate that gaming IP is the next big IP for the film industry. Like, as people start to get more and more bored or there's superhero fatigue, that's the way everything is starting to shift.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it can be very divisive because someone asked me recently about The Last of Us and how I felt about the second season. And I was like, watching it for 8 hours or 7 hours, I think there was only 7 episodes. I played it for 40 hours, maybe 50 hours. So that gets different. You get very emotionally connected when you play the game, like a game for that long. So yeah, very interesting. I hope so.
And without spoiling it, you're referring to something happening to a specific character that I've never played the game, didn't really watch the show, but one of the YouTube channels I follow, The Critical Drinker, he was very you familiar with him? Yeah, he was very critical of the show, and then he had one video where it was like, "Holy shit, I can't believe they did this in the show," and it was like something that and he was cutting back and forth with to the game, showing that scene in the game. So, again, won't spoil it for anyone because, yes, it is
Yeah.
something, that you have to experience. So, but
Yes.
why do you credit your aunt as, your role model?
She is close in age to me. So she was very young when I was born. And as a result, or just maybe our personalities, we were pretty close when I was growing up. And, I remember being at my grandparents' house in Dublin when she was in college and I was a child. And so we were, she was close enough in age to me that I was able to see her grow up, go to college. She moved to New York when I was pretty young, but we would see her a lot. Like we would go visit her, and she was just like, she lived in New York. She still lives there now, but she lived in New York during the time when like Friends came out, when it was just like, that kind of cultural moment in New York. And it always made me love New York as well. And I lived there too, actually, when I'm in my early 20s. And so, she's just very driven. She's very ambitious, but she's beautifully I think has this like warm, incredibly caring heart, cares deeply about people, helps whoever she can help. Like she's, really in a way like harder, maybe outer shell, but really soft on the inside. And she's just beautiful. So, I've always admired her. I've always admired her work ethic. And we were always very close. My family would joke that I was very like her. Like I'm also very ambitious. I'm very driven. And we ended up in the same industry as well. So, it's, yeah, she definitely was somebody that I'd always looked up to, and we're still close.
Sounds more like a sister dynamic than like an aunt and a niece.
Yeah, actually, I've never thought of it that way, but she would have been more like an older sister, perhaps. My parents were very young when I was born, so yeah, she definitely had the older sister vibes.
What about Elizabeth Gilbert, the author? Like, tell us a little bit about her and what she's written, and why you also consider her to be like a role model.
Yeah. Oh God. Okay. So I came across her like many people when she wrote the book Eat, Pray, Love, which I liked, but never, I would never would have considered that book to be hugely instrumental to me. It was a nice read. I enjoyed it. I do think it was probably one of the first of its kind or day in those types of emotional explorations into the psyche, like perhaps. And I did enjoy it, but it was her book Big Magic that I read recently that really resonated with me, and I started to get to know her a little bit better. Every word that she writes in that book is beautiful, and it's well chosen. It's very intentional. When you read the words, you can tell that she thinks about the way she articulates ideas very carefully and beautifully, and it resonates so much with me. And the book itself, if you haven't read it, it's about creativity, and it's about unlocking your own sense of creativity. And I just found most of her ideas really, to be so liberating and so powerful, and they resonated with me very deeply. And so I just found myself being really obsessed with her this year. And she is definitely standing out for me at the moment as being someone that's really culturally, influenced me.
So, because Big Magic was an influence for you and you're using it in your day to day, is it one of those kind of books you've got with like post it notes and highlights through everywhere? You're like referring back to certain chapters?
Yeah. So when I have a book like that, I will have the Kindle version so that I can like, make the notes and everything. And I'll also listen to it. So I actually listen to it on Spotify. I listen to all my audiobooks on Spotify now because with the premium version. And so I started off listening to it, just listening, like listening to the audiobook. But because I loved it so much, then I bought the book, the Kindle version. And that will show you, like, I have two different versions, and I will likely buy the physical version as well, which is very rare for me to do, is to buy a physical book because, I'm a huge reader. So, like, I don't have space for much more books in my house. But if it's at the very top of the list, I will.
I always ask my guests what their very first part time job was. And I get a mix of usually fast food. They were working in restaurants. Maybe they were doing retail. We've got babysitting and camp counselors in there, but yours is pretty unique. So tell us about what Enable Ireland was and what you were doing there.
Oh, yes. So, as part of my, I guess, high school program, so there's a thing called transition year, which is this. So, it's trying to think, it would be in between ninth and 10th grade, I want to say, or maybe between 10th and 11th grade. And it's a year where you get to explore different subjects that you wouldn't get to explore typically in a school setting. So, you do work experience. For example, you go out into the world and and actually, it's funny. I would say my first part-time job, now that I'm actually like speaking through it, was, and this is crazy, was in an internet cafe.
Yes, those are awesome. Where everyone had like a
Like,
big projection type monitor and you had a tower next to you.
yes. It was a groundbreaking experience. Like, it was the first place that I got, like, it was the first time I ever got an email address. It was like that was where
Ah,
I got.
okay.
I was
Was it
15.
was it a Hotmail address?
It
Because
was a
that's what
hot.
we were all getting back then. Yep, Hotmail. Yep.
Of course, I still have it, but good God, like God knows how I would ever get into it. So that was technically my first work experience. But Enable Ireland stuck out to me because I remember as part of Transition Year, you do a bunch of different placements, and this is a center for kids with physical disabilities. And so I went with there was a bunch of us that went from school to work there for a couple of weeks as camp counselors, and it was just a really rewarding experience. We there was just this wonderful feeling of kind of the camaraderie of a camp, getting to know people with different ability levels. Like, it was not something that I had really experienced. I don't have anybody in my family with different types of anyone with physical disabilities, really. And so it was just a different way to experience the world and get to know people with different challenges. And I remember it being just really a lovely experience for me.
Looking back at that experience or looking back at that job, considering what you're doing now, do you ever look at that and go, huh, maybe that was consciously or subconsciously kind of planting the seeds for what I'm doing now? Because in a way, as a counselor, you are a coach. Like those kids are looking up to you, whether you want them to or not, they are definitely looking up to you. And these were kids that had different challenges that the average kid didn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it makes, like, if I think back on that time, I definitely think that it sparked a curiosity for other people's experiences in the world.
That's a good way of looking at it too. Yeah.
So like, how do you experience the world, and not making assumptions that other people experience it the way that I experience it? I think that's really something that I find comes naturally to me now, but didn't always, and that comes to mind when I think about that time.
Why the University of Limerick and why did you study English and philosophy?
So the University of Limerick, because I wanted to stay at home and I didn't want to move out for whatever reason.
Really?
I know. I
Why?
had a lot of wanderlust and I lived loads of different places, but yet I guess maybe at that time I was young as well. Like, I think I just turned 17 in that summer that I was going to university. And
Mm.
maybe that was something to do with it. And then I chose English because that was my best subject. I loved it. I loved reading. I loved all of, English. I really enjoyed in school. So that was like a natural thing. But if I'm honest, I picked it because I didn't really know what I wanted. And to think that we can make a decision about what, back then, it was your whole career for your whole life, right? Like, it was like,
Yeah.
you're going to choose to be a lawyer forever. You're going to choose to be a nurse forever or a doctor forever, whatever it is. And I just wasn't ready to make that decision. And so I thought to myself, I'll do a degree in arts because that's, it's still going to university, and I'll do a postgrad if necessary to specialize, and I'll have more time. So that was kind of the idea. So I chose English, and then I was really drawn to philosophy. And I think that was just, I'm a very curious person. I like to ask questions. It was so intriguing to me. So in the system, in the degree program that I did, the first year was, again, kind of similar, I suppose, to transition year, in the sense that, like, you were graded and you did have exams, but nothing stuck towards your final degree designation or whatever. So you could choose anything, you could do anything. So I did philosophy, I did theology back then. I did, a bunch of different things. And I had to settle and choose for second year. I had to choose two subjects to specialize in or major in, and those were the ones that I chose. So English and philosophy. At that point, I was more enjoying the philosophy, actually.
Did you ever consider maybe taking a gap year? Because I found when I was backpacking and I got to meet a lot of Europeans eons ago, that was something that was socially acceptable. Like over here, it was like, what do you mean you're taking a year off? But so that was something that you had floated.
It's a rite of passage for sure. And you either take a gap year, or you take the summer before you go to university, or you take like a summer after the university, or summers in general. Summers are long. When you're in secondary school, you have like 3 full months off,
Really?
university.
Okay,
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Even like, even primary school. So my son is off for 3 full months as well. So the summers are always really long here. And so typically, like, a lot of people will do well, back in the day, it was the J1 visa, which is America, which is going to the US. And that was the most common thing that happened in my generation, was people would go to the US for the summer. And I knew that I would go, but I guess thinking back, I don't know if it appealed to me back then. But I did end up going to the US eventually. I didn't do a gap year. And then when I finished university, I met my now husband, and I was like, there was no way I was going to be leaving him. And we eventually ended up traveling anyway to Canada. So it kind of all worked out.
But you guys ended up I guess you guys were together at this point because after graduation, you made your way to New York City. You already mentioned it early on. And was this your first media and marketing job, an intern at InStyle magazine?
So that was when I was in university.
Well, that
So
was
it
you were in university at that point.
was,
Okay.
yeah. So in the third year, they give you pretty much the whole year because at the arts program that I did, you have the first year to kind of figure out like what subjects you want to choose. Second year, you do like full on exams and, it's very academic. Third year, you do work experience. So you do two different things. I worked first, funnily enough, this you'll laugh. I was a career coach in the university. So that was my first 6 months, my first semester, I should say. And then my second semester was New York. So I went and I did an internship at Time Inc. At the time, it was on 6th Avenue and the 52nd, I want to say. So I went there for 6 months or so, just whatever the semester was. I think it was January to June or something like that. And it was the year after 9/11, I remember, because New York
Mm.
was interesting. It was a different place. It was different. Um, of course, naturally after everything that had happened. And so, yeah, I was very interested in getting into marketing was what I wanted to be in at the time. I had this like the Devil Wears Prada type thing in my head. I was like, oh, I'll go and I'll work for a magazine and it'll be super fun because I love to read and I loved, still love to read. And so I ended up doing an internship there and in the marketing department. It was great. I got to meet the most amazing people, learned a ton. Um, it was a really interesting time. I don't know if it's the same. I can't imagine it's the same. Like, obviously, the industry has changed so much. There was no social media, there was no digital at all, really, at all.
No, no, I remember those times too. I started in broadcast, and I remember when digital was like this little afterthought they throw in as added value on campaigns.
Totally, it was
Yeah,
added value. I
there was
remember
added
that.
value. It was just like, and I remember seeing some of the early
The end of
campaign.
the time.
They'd be like, "Oh, if you give us a couple $1,000, we'll just put your ads in rotation." I'm just like, "Not even guaranteed impressions. We're just trust us. We'll run the ads." Yeah, it definitely took a back seat. Those are interesting times now that we look back at them. They were complicated and simple all at once, if that's even possible. So, was uh, was your aunt living in New York at that time? Like, was that the attraction to New York? Were there any other? What were your other options outside of New York? Like, were you thinking London, maybe going to Dublin as well too?
Never
Anywhere
thought of
else?
London. Never
Never
thought of
really.
London. Never. And you know what? It's so funny because I go there a lot now because I'm so close there to there. Like, it's an hour flight, and I have friends there, and I definitely have a sliding doors moment where I'm like, I could have gone to London, and I would have stayed in London probably because I think it's an amazing city. It's possibly bigger, I think, than New York. I think it's bigger than New York in terms of,
Yeah, it's a lot
yeah,
bigger.
yeah. And it's fabulous. And it's close to where like my family are. And so it's funny that I never considered it, but it was always New York for me, always.
I'm a big racing fan, so I used to just love British magazines. Like, that's what I would just indulge in, and I have to pay the premium rate here because they wouldn't even have a Canadian price on the
Yeah.
actual cover. So, you go to Chapters or Indigo and they'd slap, 12, $13 on an Autosport magazine, you'd have to buy it. And yeah, no, I spent some time living and learning over there as well too. And we would have people from like Haymarket come in and they would do big presentations and so forth. And they would get very touchy if you brought up like possible decline. What was it? I said decline in readership once, and he snapped at me and said circulation, and I was just like, oh, okay, sorry. Okay.
Oh,
He's
well, there
like,
is
he's
a
like,
difference.
people are still reading. They're just passing it along. He would say. I was like,
Well,
okay.
I mean, circulation is the sales, and then readership is like three per magazine, four per magazine or whatever. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So at the doctor's
Yeah,
office, and 10 people sat there and read it before they got a flu shot. So that counts for something.
absolutely.
10 impressions delivered for, yeah, on one $3 magazine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So you continued in New York though. Was your first sales role at Hot Press? You got to tell us what Hot Press is because your imagination can go anywhere with that name. So what was Hot Press? And that was in New York again, right?
No, that was in Dublin, funnily
Okay,
enough.
so you're back in. Okay, so you're back in Ireland
So I'm
now.
back in Dublin. I'm finished university at this point, and I'm living in Dublin. And I start working. I go for an interview at this magazine, Hot Press magazine, and it's an edgy, music, vibey, cool magazine. Which I am none of those things at all. Like, I'm not
Okay.
edgy or cool or vibey, or I'm not really like, I'm into music, but I'm not into like, I was never into the cool music or anything like that. So very
Was it
fun.
like an Irish version of like Chart or Billboard?
Yeah,
Or
Billboard, exactly.
Billboard? Okay, closer to
Yeah.
Billboard. All right.
Yeah. And so I go in and I went in for a marketing role, and it was like a marketing assistant role or whatever. And I remember wearing a suit, full on suit, like pantsuit. And I went in and had a lovely conversation with the two. So it was the head of sales was one of them. And the other was, I guess, the kind of director of editorial, but she actually was also a part owner of the magazine. It was a small family business, but, well, medium-sized business. And interestingly, as I was sitting talking to them, and I never forget this, I can even see myself in the room, they turn to me and they say, "Have you ever thought about sales?" And I was like, "No, no, never." And they were like, "Would you like to try it? And if you want, like, we'll give you the job if you want to." And I was like, "Okay." Like, I was 22 and they were like offering me the job right there in the room and saying, like, "If you want the job, it's yours. Like, just, you know, if you want to go into sales." And I was like, "Sure. I don't know. Yeah." So I did. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it
Did you
from the
ever ask them what they saw in you though? Because it kind of sounds like one of those stories you hear like from actors or actresses where they go in and they audition for one part and they get a completely different role in the film. And maybe they're a little sad that they didn't get the role they were auditioning for, but the role that they're given totally helps their career take off. Like they might win an award for it. They own every scene they're in. Like the director saw something in them that they didn't see for that specific role.
I guess I should have, and I never did. And, I wish I did. Like, what a great question to ask, for your learning and for your growth and everything. But it was a great time. I worked there for about 2 years and I learned so much, about just being like determined. And we were small, and like there was not so much of a sales strategy, right? Like, as in, there wasn't the way that we would do things now with, like, either being verticalized or doing, like, having agency teams, all that. We were just too small, and it was everything was new to me, like everything. And it gave me such a great experience. I mean, for a finish, we were going over to London and pitching P&G. Like, it was fantastic. Like, it was a huge growth in that company, and it was cool. It was fun. It was a cool place to work.
Did you have any apprehensions about sales? Because it sounds like you just kind of went into it blind. And I say that because I know a lot of people avoid sales. Like internally, like I've met people who want to remain account managers. They don't want to make the jump to sales because you tend to lose your job sometimes if like you're not making it and they see the kind of pressures you have to go through as you get towards end of quarter or end of fiscal and so forth. Like sounds like none of that was on your shoulders at all. Like you didn't know what you were stepping into.
I did not. I did definitely didn't know that it was a, like, high pressure role. But at that point, and this would have been just part of my personality at the time, it would have been even stronger, was just this, like, relentless drive and ambition. I would have done anything to grow, and get to whatever I thought was, like, the next level. And one thing that really, I think, I loved about sales, and I still do to this day, that has always stuck with me, is it always felt kind of gamified for me. And it spoke to so many different parts of me, this entrepreneurial part where you have a business within a business. I love that. Like, I just think that's
Yeah, it,
just
it is
so,
true. Yeah.
it's so cool. And what an opportunity for a 22-year-old to run a business within a business. Like, who gets to do that? You get to do that in sales, and you
Yeah.
get to have the autonomy, and you get to have the control, which would have been important to me back then as well. And then the fun of it working when it worked, really well. And when people were like, "Actually, yeah, this sounds like a great idea." And I really enjoy people. And I think what always kind of helped me in sales as well is my curiosity. So, like, I would never take the surface level answer, because I'd always be like, "Well, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean by that?" Like, if someone was to say to me, like, "Oh, it's not, like, you're too expensive." And I'd say, "But compared to what? Like,
Yeah,
what do
that's what you
you compare?"
have to
Like,
say. Like, what is
yeah,
expensive to you? Like, you
what does that
assign a
mean?
value. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and so that stood to me, and that helped. And I suppose then you just start to get the positive feedback cycle, and you start to kind of say, "Okay, maybe I'm good at this." And then, like, sales is very immediately, like, you get that feedback, right? Like, you
Hmm.
immediately start to see if you're good at it or not. And I was good at it.
Do you remember your first close? Like, who that was? Like, the agency was it with an agency and a client, or is it just directly with a client?
It was a client. I don't know if it was exactly my first close, but it was El Paso. It was the food, the taco, like, so I don't know
Oh,
if you know.
General Mills, Old El
Yeah, General
Paso.
Mills.
Yes. Oh God,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
Mexican CPG food. This is great. Or American
yeah.
Mexican food. Oh
Yep,
yes,
exactly. And I sold the outer cover, like, which was a big deal.
that is a big deal.
Yeah, and we were doing a Mexican theme in the magazine. Like, we were doing some sort of, like, I don't know if it was Mexican music, or, like, there was a lot of things around Mexico, and that was it. Like, I just, and it worked. And I was able to, I remember the marketing director that worked there at the time, and he was a great guy and very just open-minded, right? Like, and willing to test things and be experimental. And he was like, this, yeah, this does make sense. And I remember feeling just that like incredible. And again, I think it probably connects to my love of gaming, but this sense of like, you know, I don't know, like getting a level up or something, like moving into the next level, or just like collecting a prize or all of those kinds of things that you feel like that are gamified. That's what it feels like. That's what it felt like to me.
So let's touch on something that you said a couple of minutes ago that so you're new to sales and you're figuring it out as you go along. Do you think that's helped you in your coaching career? Because you can look back and go, there was a lot of trial and error involved here. So I know why I do X and why not to do Y anymore because I did both and I could see that one worked and one didn't.
Yeah. I think over the years, I think what probably has helped me is the sense that in sales, I think of maybe two things. You're rejected a lot and you
Well,
become
yes,
a lot, and you become very resilient to that. And you then stop taking things so personally. And I think that that has really stuck with me. And being able to kind of separate those two things. So I think the resilience has really helped. And then I think the second thing is it's about like failing, I suppose, or like what is failure? Failure is just information. But like when you don't end up getting what you want, the door is never like it felt like it was never really closed. It was just how I would think about it. So it kind of created this sense of psychological flexibility for me, where it was like, okay, well, this didn't work out now, but maybe it'll work out in a year. And I suppose I have a natural optimism as well that I think just is part of my personality. And so all of those things kind of come together, I think, to help me, and it does support me as a coach as well, because I mean, as a coach, one of your fundamental beliefs, if you're in coaching, is that you have a belief that people can grow, like people can change, right? Like I've never, the way people are like, people will say, oh, you'll never change or things like that. Couldn't be the more opposite of how I feel about the world. I'm like, it's inevitable that everything will change, including you, including me. And that's great. That's a really good thing. So yeah, I did that answer your question?
oh, it definitely did. And I'm going to give you a business idea. Failure is just information. That should be on a t shirt and you should start selling them on your website right
Yeah.
there. Next time
Yeah.
you're at a conference, that's what you're wearing.
Failure, just information, just data.
Failure look, I mean, you and I probably go to our share of conferences, and have you noticed that people seem to dress down a lot more for them now than they do? So if you're showing up with a t-shirt saying that, you're gonna get a lot of attention. People are gonna be taking selfies with you, whereas if you were doing the conventional pantsuit or if I showed up in a tie, you just kinda
Yeah.
blend with the scenery or people would think you're being pretentious.
Oh, I love that. I mean, I'm very dressed down. I barely wear jeans anymore. Like it's jeans are seen as like very top tier, formal. So anything that allows me to dress down, I love.
I did a meeting once in a Deadpool sweatshirt, and I got the business.
Love
And
it.
I
Very
wasn't paid.
similar. We never wore any like anything. It was very dressed down.
When I started in broadcast, it was very buttoned up, and when I got to digital and I started
Yeah.
having meetings with people in, like, thong sandals and flip-flops, I was like, "Okay, you know what? I gotta do more than just take the tie off and leave that at home." So,
Yeah. We had one guy that used to wear shorts and like flip flops all the time, like sandals, all the time to work. It was funny.
let's talk about your next role. So, You Magazine. So, how did you find your way there, and how did your responsibilities and sales change from your previous role?
So You Magazine was part of Harmonia, and Harmonia was the biggest publishing company at the time in Ireland. And it
Ah,
was,
okay.
yeah, so it was kind of like a direction that I was going in. I wanted to work for the biggest company. I wanted to work for the biggest magazine at that company. So it was part of the ambitious, I suppose, my drive at the time, to continue growing and moving into new and more, I suppose, bigger challenges. So the head of the company at the time, the owner of the company, was a woman called Nora Casey, and she was very well known in the circles of Irish like magazine publishing, as well as like she ended up being on TV and radio and things like that. So she was pretty well known, and I thought that I could learn a lot from her. And so I didn't start at You Magazine. I started at a couple of different magazines, like specialty magazines. One I remember for the K Club, which I don't know if you know if you're into golf, but it's a pretty big.
No, I'm unfamiliar with it.
Yeah, so they had their own, I wonder if they still have it, but they had their own like bespoke, very, very high end magazine for I suppose for guests and golf club members and things like that, people that, members. And so I started there, but I moved into U Magazine after a while. And yeah, that was like the zenith for me. It was like the peak of magazines was in Ireland anyway at the time. And when I think back, I suppose I was going to end up somewhere outside Ireland, perhaps, because at that point I had worked at Hot Press for about 2 years, and then I worked for Harmonia for about 3.5. And then I was starting to get itchy feet again. I was like, okay, what's next? And that's when I moved to Toronto.
When you say you get itchy feet, what happens? Like, do you kind of get up in the morning and go, I'm doing what I did the day before. Maybe I'm getting a little bit bored. Do you find things might be getting a little bit too easy and routine and just you're kind of saying to yourself, okay, I need a bit of discomfort in order
All
to
of the
grow.
all
All
of
of
the
that. So, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And I really love the way that you've described all of that. Yeah. I mean, exactly. And I think it's funny how you say I need a little bit of discomfort in order to grow, because as a coach now, I talk about that a lot. And I actually say that our ability to tolerate discomfort is a competitive advantage. If you can figure that out, you can pretty much do anything.
You want a good gaming analogy for that? Oh, I'm going to throw this one down for you. Okay. So I assume you probably had a PlayStation 2.
I'm sure I did. Like it would have been in my early 20s. So I think I did, but I definitely had the one and the three and the four and the five.
Okay. So, but you probably remember the Metal Gear Solid game series.
Yes.
So I had Metal Gear Solid 2, and I was never a big first-person shooter action game, but one of the things I enjoyed about that game was you could go back and do the levels over again. And you know when you find yourself on a level that you just can't beat to the point where you just don't even wanna look at your gaming system for a week, and then you just go at it and go at it and you get it done. And usually when you beat that level for the first time, it's by the skin of your teeth. It's like you just barely made that jump or killed the enemy or whatever it was. I found myself going back and doing those levels that were hard over and over again to prove to myself that that was not a fluke and that I owned it. And that kind of showed me that I was becoming a better gamer because what I found difficult, like the level I'm referring to in Metal Gear Solid, he's he's basically trapped in a building that's underwater. And so there's a lot of swimming that has to happen and he can't breathe underwater. So you've kind of got like this timer going off letting you know that you're about to drown and pass out. So it's very anxious this level. Like right now I'm saying it and I'm speaking even quicker than I was before. I'm probably perspiring. But yeah,
I'm
like
getting stressed.
I'm like, no, literally, it would stress the hell out of me. It was kind of like, yeah. But anyways, digressing a little bit, but that's what came to my mind was is that going back and doing those levels over and over again till you own them, and then you moved on to the next game.
Yeah. God mode. You need to
God,
get to
I
God.
no, I've played some games on God mode. I think the last game I played on God mode was the very first Doom game, or it was I think it was Hell mode. It was called, and it's just like demons everywhere, and I'm like, like your shotgun can't even reload quick enough to take care of everyone.
Well,
Like
when I
that's
say
when you
God
throw in the
mode, I guess
towel.
like, yeah, I think when I say it, what I mean is, I guess when you get to
Well,
the
you're owning it. Okay.
you're godlike, right? OP, like you've gotten to the point where nothing will ever like you nothing will stop you. Like you're unbeatable now.
I don't think I've ever been that in a video game. Actually, no, Gran Turismo too. No, I was pretty good at that one.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
that was my game. But okay, so this was your last role in Ireland.
Mhm.
And you even said it yourself too that as you moved into that last role, you were starting to think, where else am I going to go? Like maybe my career is limited in Ireland. So, Sizzy in Toronto. Did I pronounce it right? I even though I've read this website so many times because all the press
Vision.
releases Cision,
Vision.
Cision Canada.
Yep.
How did that opportunity across the Atlantic present itself, and were there any other countries that you were looking at as well too for opportunity?
I think at the time I was thinking about America, like New York, that was something, but I guess it was a more difficult route. And at the time, there was a lot of advertising from Canada into Ireland about this 1 year visa that they had at the time, which was like come over, work for a year and experience Toronto, Canada, whatever. You didn't have to go to Toronto. I know a lot of people that went to Vancouver, but that really appealed to me. And there was something about it where I was like, okay, this is cool. And it's like an hour from New York. So, like, and I suppose I had it in my head because I had lived in New York twice at that point. I had lived there for a summer as well. And I had the Wanderlust. My now husband and I both, said we'd go together. And yeah, so we ended up arriving in Toronto in February, which was a terrible idea.
Yep.
Terrible. Didn't realize. I thought people were exaggerating about the Toronto winters. I was like, they can't be that bad. Like, I don't know. I just tended to just completely look past any of that. And so we arrived pretty much end of January, start of February that year. And it was rough, just I don't even think I had a proper winter coat because we don't have them here. Like you don't need big parkas. Like it's just not something that's really even sold. Like, it's just not necessary. So that was a real change. And yeah, so Cision, it wasn't called Cision at the time. It was called Canada Newswire, or it's part of Cision. Like they've changed, I mean, over the years, they've changed names and moved around and things, but they're owned by Cision now. And it was they had a variety of different products, and it was a really good opportunity for me because they did two things that I had not experienced to that point. Number one, they were excellent at sales training, flawless,
Okay.
really, really good. They gave such amazing opportunities to people who work there in terms of learning and development. And I will always be so grateful for that. I mean, really impressive. We did Miller Hyman at the time. I had weeks and weeks and weeks of just bespoke training, sales training, to go through all of the different products. And the second thing was that they had a huge suite of products. So they had a media monitoring solution. They sold to PR, companies. Like it was just there was tons. They did video production and distribution. Like it was just really interesting. And it was the type of sale that I had not done before. It was very different from magazine advertising. And, it was something, I suppose I didn't fall into it, but I really liked the company. I really loved my manager. He was a great guy. Again, really into learning and development, which is where I think a lot of my interest grew from was the way that they gave such a great opportunity for learning. And they did a president's club, which I had never had before. I had never had the opportunity to do like competitions, for my work. Like that was really fun. I won a holiday to Jamaica out of it, which was fantastic. Never been to Jamaica at that time. We went to this ridiculous place. It was so nice. And it was just this really cool experience. Like I learned to work with technical solutions, right? So going into a sales meeting and bringing an expert with me instead of me being the expert, learning how to be a quarterback, learning how to manage the sale in a very different way, very consultative, very strategic, and long-term sales cycles. Nothing like selling advertising, like and selling, big enterprise level type solutions. And so it was very, very different and a really interesting opportunity. Great people that worked there. So yeah, it was definitely, it was probably one of the places that was most outside. If you look at my career, kind of most outside, which makes sense because like it was, I was in a new country and all of that. But it was probably that role and that company that sparked my real love of coaching, learning, growth, development, and all of that.
And you're in an interesting position because you're a veteran salesperson right now, but unlike your very first sales job where you had to make contacts from the ground up, now you're doing that again at Cision, but you're far more experienced to do it.
Yeah.
Did you
Yeah.
like that? Do you like the thrill of the hunt? Like when they just give you a clean sheet and you're like, and even
Yeah.
like you can't really tap into people that you've tapped into before?
Yeah, it was a different skill set. It was the first time I used Salesforce, which was very,
Mm.
very interesting. I thought that they were so like high tech, like having Salesforce. Like we didn't have Salesforce in Ireland. I think we probably had it in Ireland. We just didn't have it at my role or my company. So, I remember my VP at the time saying, if it's not in Salesforce, it doesn't exist. And I remember being like, oh my God, like,
I've
okay.
heard that too. No, I use Salesforce as well. And yeah, no, I've heard that before.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so
And
it's
I've
not even an
manager,
original line.
yeah, like I've probably said that to, well, maybe not those exact words, but I know how important it is being in different roles and having to use it to report. But that was the first time that I used it in a role. But yeah, just that was new for me as well, and it was a really interesting time, a time of like huge challenge in a sense because moving to a country that I didn't know anyone there. We didn't have any friends there. We thought that we would stay a year and that was it. But then we just started to love it and we started to really enjoy the culture and the people. And we just, Toronto, and it was just really fun. And I remember though, and I talked about this before, like a different event that I was at, where I had this experience where I was interviewing at the time before I got that job, and I went for a role, and it was going really well. I had had a few different interviews, and it looked like it was kind of a done deal at the time. I was getting to that point, and I went in to the sales director, who was just supposed to be the kind of nod, like just to meet me and say, yeah, she's good. But the sales manager had said, this is, you're good. We like you. And so I was really maybe overconfident going into this meeting with the sales director. And I spoke to him, he asked me some questions and he said, I'm just going to give you some feedback right now. And I was like, oh God, okay.
Wow, that's a cold shower.
It was.
Yeah.
And he said, you speak too fast. You need to slow down. And I was like, okay. And I was like trying really hard, like not to burst into tears. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I'm just letting you know, that's important. And I was like, okay. I'm sure he said more things than that, but that was what stuck with me. And I left there, didn't get the job, devastated, like really upset. And when I went to that job at Cision, within the first couple of months, I had signed up for Toastmasters to learn how to speak publicly, and really hone that. And while I think that his feedback was harsh and he could have probably delivered it in a way that was less brutal perhaps, and I also was coming in, like, it wasn't his problem that I was, new to the city, very kind of, green in a sense, like didn't know Toronto, wasn't Canadian, like had that very different perspective. um it was good feedback, and I did talk too fast, and I learned how to speak slower, and it was a great skill that stood to me because I used it every single day in my sales career.
Had that issue too. I lost at least one internal promotion at a company because of that. And I remember one of my sales manager at the time had kind of sat me down and spoken to me about it. And I thought speaking quickly meant confidence, whereas if you spoke slowly, it showed an insecurity within the material that you're presenting. And so what I did was I said, look, a couple of people have said this to me. There's a certain point where, you've got to listen to the mob. And so what I did is I turned my computer on, queued up the sales presentation. I just went through like 3 slides, presented it the way I would, played it back for myself, and I was like, "Holy shit. That's what I sound like?" And then ever since then, I've been working to like dial it back, except for when I'm talking about Metal Gear Solid 2 and gaming. And then I just start to fall apart. It's 2002 all over again for me.
Wow. And I think that you speak so beautifully and you have a podcast,
Thank
it's,
you. Thank
yeah.
you. God, I
Mm.
hope after 125 episodes, I've learned something about myself.
Yeah,
Could you
right.
imagine that getting up and playing basketball every morning and you still can't make a free throw after like 10
What
years? It'd just
wonderful
be like, "Oh god."
persistence. What
That would
amazing
be.
persistence.
That shows that you love the sport. Like, you just
Right?
wanna show up, you're happy to be there.
I
Uh,
want to know what gets that guy up in the morning.
Absolutely. So you spent 11 years at Cision. So take us through what you were like day 1 versus the very last day at the company after you turned in, I guess, your key card.
Yeah, so I was actually, funnily enough, so I was there 2 years. I think you're probably looking at Twitter. That's where I was there. I
Oh,
was there.
geez, I was getting
Yep.
it backwards. It's 2
Yep.
years, alright.
Yep. So 2 years. Yeah, I guess I had just gotten to the point where I had felt, again, itchy feet. Really, I was
Mm.
confident in what I was selling, and I was feeling too comfortable, I guess. And I wanted to grow. And I remember at the time I had three different companies that I was interviewing with. It was Yahoo at the time, it was Salesforce, and it was Twitter. And Twitter was still very new. It was like they didn't have an office in Canada. It was just opening, and I actually ended up getting offers from all three of them the same day. It was the weirdest thing. I'll never forget. Yeah, I was in the corner, like, meeting room in Cision, or like Canada Newswire as it was known at the time. And I ended up getting the final call from the recruiter, and I called Shane, my husband, and I was like, what has just happened? Like, I'm not sure what's happening, but I have them all now, like all offers. And obviously, like, I was also working with them to say I had an offer from this place and that place and everything. But at the time, I had three in front of me, and I was very drawn to all of them for different reasons. They were really good people at all of them. I was very drawn to Yahoo. I knew that they had an excellent reputation at the time. There were some great people that worked there. Salesforce was just, you know, I knew that they had a great program of, like, learning and development, for example. I knew that they had the best, like, like, really the best salespeople worked there. It had such high credibility with me. But then Twitter was so new and fun and playful as a brand. And I just thought that would be really cool to try to work at a place like that, where it's starting from nothing. Like, there was nothing. We were in a rental office, and there was like, I remember we had an opening party at was it called the Carlou? Is there still a hotel in Toronto called the Carlou?
Yeah, yeah, the
Or
Carlou's still around. If
yeah, that's
they
where.
might have turned it into a condo like everything
Yeah,
else,
I
but
don't remember seeing it. Like, it's literally like something that just sprung up for the night and then just vanished. But we had the party at the Carlou, the launch party for Twitter, and like that's where I met my, like, colleagues, all the people that were launching it with me. And so I ended up going for Twitter, and that's where I ended up spending 11 years, 10 and a half.
10 and a half. Okay, so let's start from like the beginning there. I've got everything queued up here. So, what was your very first role there? Was it account manager?
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so you get in there as account manager, and I mean, I have to imagine you probably spent the first couple of weeks in probably in San Francisco, doing a lot of onboarding. What was that onboarding process like? Because that can be pretty intense.
It was 2 weeks, because the where I started in June, and so they had the sales conference as well in July. So when I went over, I did a week of training and then a week of the sales conference. So I was gone for 2 weeks, and it was very, like, just very different. Did you watch that program? You remember that lady from Theranos or Theranos? Um,
Well, I haven't seen the film, but it's the one with Anne Hathaway
no,
and
not Anne Hathaway. What's her name? Elizabeth. No, not Elizabeth. Elizabeth is her real name. Amanda
oh,
Seyfried.
I haven't seen it, but I have seen documentaries based on Theranos. But
There
was
you
she
go.
speaking there?
No, but if you actually watch that documentary or that show, and anyone that's listening to this that has seen that show, they're all going around the place in like Patagonia vests, and it's like just this crazy San Francisco hype thing. That's what Twitter was like, exactly like what Twitter was like when we first went to the office. It was like they're feeding us constantly. Like there was just food everywhere all the time. Like the food was so crazy and overwhelming. They used to call it the Twitter 20. You'd put on 20 pounds during
God.
your training because you just ate all the time. The morning, the lunches, it was insane the amount of food that was there. That's what I remember most from that first 2 weeks.
Did they at least, I don't know, allow you to cover your gym pass, your membership? Because that'd be a nice way to balance it out.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. Like it was right at the height of when people in tech were being treated like kings and queens. Like it was just so insane. It was a time of like utter excess, great benefits, mad food, like I said, and loads of swag and a huge, when I think back about it, like, from a cultural, like a workplace culture perspective, it was very much about indoctrinating you into the family and into the culture, and you were a tweep and that meant something, and you were part of this like family, essentially, and you were part of this like community, this small community that felt very special at the time.
How did your responsibilities change when you were promoted to lead client partner?
So that happened over the course of a few years. So I moved from being an account manager to an account executive, which basically it's not so much of a promotion as it is like a change in responsibilities. So it's because you work as a pair, you work together with your account manager and your account executive. So the responsibilities did change. It was you're more kind of, I suppose, running the outbound book of business, the revenue reporting, and all of those things would definitely lie with the account executive. Bringing in the different specialty or specialists and, people from research, for example, people from product or the product specialist team. So the responsibilities changed. And over the years, the office changed too, right? Like it became more streamlined and we got managers. When we first started, we didn't have any managers. Like it was just all of us. Like it was a wild, wild west. I think I had like 100 clients. I remember one time this guy I think he was from Calgary. He was like emailing me nonstop about a campaign that he was running on Twitter, and he was spending $1 a day and he couldn't understand what was happening with like 30 cents of it. 30 cent. And I was like, I cannot, like, I have to prioritize. I have to figure out how to
Yes.
prioritize myself. It was crazy because at the time we were just taking in anything. Like it was just, you know, so obviously that changed and we streamlined, we verticalized, we got managers, we got different teams. So I ended up specializing in financial services at the time, which was great and an interesting, book of business, more maybe risk averse than others. They weren't, well, I was about to say they weren't doing the kind of fun programs, but to be fair, they actually did. They did a lot of really good programs, and it was a fun vertical to work on. Very, very smart people, huge businesses, as you can imagine, big teams, multiple teams, creative agencies, advertising agencies, the client teams, the social teams, the digital teams. Like it required you, and I think that's why I liked it. It was challenging. Like it was very challenging to run a book of business for that vertical because it's a tough vertical, to wrap your arms around. So it was great. And then over the years, I got promoted and I moved into this, lead position. And I got pregnant. I had gotten married a few years earlier, and with Shane, who had come with me to Canada, and had my baby in 2018, and was promoted into leadership, like a sales leadership role, which was a massive change, like a massive change. One of the biggest shifts in my career was moving from individual contributor to manager, and I think that happens. Anyone that goes through that shift can probably say that it's a big one. It's a big psychological change.
How did you adapt to that? Because that's a great point. I like to ask all of my guests who have made the jump to leadership. You're no longer a player, you're now a coach, and you're no longer getting your hands dirty. Like a lot of the stuff that you've illustrated today, you found fun.
I
And
did.
no longer are you engaging with clients on sort of like this one-to-one basis, solving their immediate problems at sort of a granular level, even like going to, I mean, I'm sure you're still going out to lunches and so forth, but not as much as before. Was it
Mm.
difficult dealing more and more with, can we say, spreadsheets and
Mm.
people than it was dealing with clients?
It was very different. I did struggle in the beginning, with the shift. And it's funny because I came back from maternity leave and went straight into the sales manager role. And so I was already kind of grappling with being out of the game for 14 months. Like I had been gone, and I struggled, going back into the workplace. I didn't tell anyone about it, of course, which in hindsight is just, but I internalized it. I thought it was something that I was doing wrong, instead of like realizing that this happens to women, when they come back from having a baby, and it's not easy. It's really not. And all my responsibilities had changed as well. There were new people on the team, and it was challenging, and I made a really bad decision in the beginning. My first day back was I flew to Houston for a week for for a sales conference, and I had never
Mm.
been away from my child at that point ever. And so I say that it was a different part of me, a different identity, that made that decision to go to that conference. And the mother part of me, the mother identity, which is really big and all consuming, really struggled with that decision. That was a very difficult one, and stayed with me as something that I don't know if I would have known. How could I have known like before it happened? But it stayed with me in terms of like, I made that decision with an old part of me, you know?
So serious separation anxiety with your son.
Yeah. Yeah, cried every day. It was,
Oh, jeez.
yeah, it was rough. And yeah, it was something that I wouldn't do again, but how can you go back and make and change these things? And I suppose it does give you that sense of like what matters most. And there were reasons why I chose to do it. I wanted to get back into the swing of things and to meet people, and I really wanted to go to Houston. I wanted to meet colleagues from across the world. It was an amazing event. It was great to go. um so but it was tough. It was a sacrifice.
Did you, in a way, and stop me if this is the wrong analogy, did you find, because you're so professionally motivated, that while you were on maternity leave, and because maternity leave, thankfully, in this country, or at least in Canada when you were here, is more on the generous side than other countries, did you kind of feel like you were out of the game a little bit? Kind of
Yeah.
like the same way, like if a player gets injured during the playoffs or a major tournament and they're, you know how it is, they'll suit up and still sit on the sidelines. They're just kind of like itching to get back in. You can even see them sometimes yelling at the pitch, saying,
Mm.
we do it, kind of doing the coach's job, even though it's like, no, your job is to heal
Yeah.
and rest. And when you're ready, we'll bring you back into the game. Did you find that you were just a little anxious to get back into it?
I
And maybe
think I
that's what pushed you to Houston because you saw this
yeah.
opportunity. You're like, I'm not just easing in, I'm coming in saying hello. And then I'm showing everyone that yeah, I'm back in and I'm a big deal again, so packing my bags and I'm going to Houston immediately.
Yeah. I mean, the ambition never went away, and the drive and the excitement about the new role. I mean, it was also pretty unprecedented. Like I found out that I was promoted into this role 2 weeks after my son was born. Like I remember having a
Oh,
call, yep, with my
wow,
man.
okay.
Yeah. And, I was like in my apartment at the time, and Paul, who was my manager, he was the head of Canada at the time. He told me that he wanted to give me this role and that he really believed in me, and I was blown away that he was like, there was no big deal about waiting a year for me to come back. He was just like, congrats again on the baby. Like, we'll see you in 12 to 14 months or whatever. And I just thought that, like, I don't think I gave him enough credit at the time, for how modern and how inclusive that is, to not have that be a factor whatsoever in his decision making around who he wanted on his leadership team. Like I just think that's really admirable. And I it shows I really appreciate that. And I really, was grateful for that. And so it was wonderful. Like when I think of it, to have learned that I got this role, that I was moving into this leadership role, and then to be told, go and enjoy your baby now, and you're good, like it's safe, your role is safe. So I was in a way like, and Twitter at the time, they had very generous maternity policies as well. Like you were paid for, I think, 5 months total. um So it was lovely, and I'm so grateful that that's when I had my son, and I was able to be in a situation where um I was able to enjoy my maternity leave so much, you know?
Can I play devil's advocate on that for a second? So you said that he told you 2 weeks after you had had your son. If knowing what you know and how you were feeling a little bit anxious to get back into the game, if you were in his shoes and you had an employee who just had a child, but you were like, "We want her on the team, we want her in a larger role," do you think you would probably wait a couple more months before you just kinda like checking in, "Hey, how's your son or your daughter doing? By the way, when you are ready to come back, this is what's waiting for you." 'Cause I kind of look at that and I'm not a mom. I don't wanna be a mansplainer or anything like that. Like, I can't be completely relatable to what you're thinking, but the first thing that popped into my head is that, "Oh my god, they told you that 2 weeks after?" I would imagine my mind going 100 miles an hour going, "Should I be thinking about wrapping up maternity leave a little bit earlier?" Because you kind of see that at the end of the tunnel a little bit. And maybe you're concerned about it not being there because we do hear about people getting offers in our industry and then having them retracted for various reasons.
Well, yeah, but that I don't think that had happened. I don't think that was as much of a thing back then anyway. Like that definitely is a thing now. But you know, I was in a process, right? So I had been interviewing for it. And so I knew like that
Oh,
this
okay, so I thought it
yeah.
was like an internal thing where they had made the decision for you, you didn't even know you were up for it. Okay, so
Yeah.
sorry,
Oh,
no,
I
that
knew I was up for it.
oh,
Yeah.
no,
I
no, no, sorry, there's okay, alright, no,
yeah.
with under that context, I get it, but, like, had
Yeah.
they just sprung it on you and you weren't expecting it, then I'd be like, "Totally
That's
wait."
very
Okay,
different. Yeah, no,
okay,
definitely sure. No, I think when I think back, I think he was just really excited to tell me. And I think he um just had seen something maybe, in terms of like he was always very supportive of my development and growth, and knew that I wanted to move into a leadership role. And I remember he was excited, to let me know that I was successful in getting that role. And yeah, and I definitely remember feeling the spaciousness. Like I never felt any pressure to come back, or, any of that. I remember enjoying it very much.
but there had to have been a part of you who was like, "Oh, I just wanna put this on my LinkedIn account. Like, I just wanna throw this up there." Like, I imagine you waited until you came back.
I think honestly, I was in such a haze of like literally 2 weeks after giving birth that you could have told me that I was taking over Canada as prime fucking minister, and I would have been like, okay,
Is
okay,
Alright. I don't have a rapid fire question for what would your first order of business be as prime minister, but I'm
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
think
yeah.
about that one for a future one. Okay, so you move into the leadership role, but an opportunity presents itself to stay with the company, but to go back home to Ireland. So what was the attraction to that? Because it seemed like you were hitting it off and you were just winning on a grand scale at Twitter's Toronto office.
I loved it. Like we had a great team there. It was because I had my son, and COVID had happened and we were all so isolated, and I wanted to go home. I wanted to be with my family. It was awful being away for over, it was like 18 months or however like long it was, that I didn't see anybody. My grandfather passed away. I had to watch his funeral on Zoom like
Oh,
many people
no.
did. Yeah. My other grandfather was ill. Like my there was just, we wanted to be home. And I'm not sure, like I think I probably would have always gotten to that point of wanting to go home even if COVID hadn't happened, but maybe not as soon. But having a toddler, he was 18 months. Like there was nothing, we could do nothing. We were at home all the time. We had no family. We had no one like, around us, and everyone was in their own bubbles. Like we had friends, and we had one group of friends that would come over, and hang out with us every week, which was so good. And we're still obviously friends to this day, but just to have your mom around or your sister, like it meant a lot. And so I was very, very fortunate that I was able to get a role within Twitter and move to a different team. And so there was a team that was being established in Europe, and they needed someone to come in and create the team and lead the team and work with the leadership, the sales leadership in Europe. And it just so happened that it just worked really well with my experience and with my skill set. It was daunting because it was not in sales; it was in sales, the sales specialist org. It was the product specialist team. And so that was, I remember feeling like that was kind of regrettable because, I would have preferred to have stayed in sales, of course. Like that would have been my preference. But that said, the team was incredible. It was, now that I look back, like having the benefit of, the experience outside of sales gives you excellent perspective, and it really helped shape, I think, my overall experience in a better way. Plus the team were just fab, like so much fun, and it was a great thing to be able to do and say that I launched a team in Europe, you know.
And you were looking after Europe, Middle East, Africa. That's the famous EMEA acronym that we always see there. So you're not just looking after one country that spans 6 time zones. We're talking about different countries, different cultures, different languages. Was there a lot of learning there as well? Just
Yes.
for that.
Yes.
Was that a bit of a cold shower?
Yeah, it was very different. I mean, you know, Dublin is really the European hub for many of these, you know, tech companies. And so there's an enormous amount of incredible talent that lives in Dublin from all different countries. I mean, I had people on my team, they would just blow my mind with the language capabilities that they had. You know, one woman spoke 5 languages, another guy was speaking, he was from Turkey originally, then he lived in Spain. Like he had, you know, 4 or 5 languages as well. And I just had so much, I learned so much, you know, about different cultures. You know, we, at the time, the Middle East was a very vibrant and very profitable and lucrative part of the business for Twitter, for Twitter ads. And so, you know, never got to go to Dubai, but it was a very big part of the business as well. Africa was still emerging, but it was fun. Yeah, I think a lot of that changed obviously when, you know, Elon took over, but I don't really know how it's all structured now. But at the time, it was a big learning curve for sure.
Okay, perfect segue.
Yeah.
Take me through, I guess, the first day you heard that Elon Musk had taken over and it had rebranded X. And it was even though it's a company you'd been at for going on 11 years or so, or pretty close to 11 years, now all of a sudden you're walking in the front doors of
Yeah.
X.
So he didn't change it to X until like a year after he took over. So there was definitely
Okay,
like
so it wasn't
a
immediate. All
period.
right.
Yeah, he kept it as Twitter. There was honestly excitement. Like so many of us were excited. We had heard the Elon murmurs. He had joined one of our sales conferences a year or two back. Maybe it was Houston even. And he had joined. He was friends with Jack Dorsey. Like it, you know, so there was like, oh my God, Elon Musk is interested in Twitter. Like how cool. Because he had a great reputation at the time. We all thought he was super smart and that he would do so much, right? Like we were very excited at the innovation that we thought would come. And it didn't really work that way. Unfortunately, it didn't roll out that way at all. There was a lot of change and a lot of, you know, people getting let go. That was really tough. And I had been at Twitter when people had gotten let go before, but this was just different. I mean, there was a depersonalization around it that was new to our industry. I mean, I think Elon and the layoffs at Twitter through email or like just denying badge access was probably one of the like the first time that happened. And I know that it's become more commonplace now. Like I know, I think, you know, didn't Meta do something similar where they only had the employee number included in like the layoff email or something? So it's become sadly more common to have a less human way of letting people go. And like the job rescindments as well, they're relatively new. Like that wasn't really happening at all, you know? Um, but now they are. So yeah, culturally there was a lot of change.
How did you adjust to the change when it went from Twitter to X and all the changes you just referenced happened and even more?
Mm. It was tough, you know, it was a massive cultural shift. It was from a very like a psychological perspective quite painful because you've worked with people for a long time and then they're just like immediately let go, walked out of the building, no way to say goodbye to them, to thank them for all the work that they've given and the contributions that they've made. You know, at that point, like the culture was very much like we're a family and we're close and, you know, we look out for each other. And it did, like that company really did look after us for a long time. It was a great place to work, you know, and it gave wonderful benefits. And through COVID, it was wonderful. So it was a huge change. And we didn't know what to expect. There was a lot of confusion. There was a lot of organizational chaos, as you can imagine, where like entire teams were let go and no one was there to do the work. So we didn't really like there was a lack of understanding. There was huge leadership change constantly. Like, let's say someone was in charge and they were gone a week later, and then this person was gone a week after that. So there was organizational chaos reigned for certainly the first couple of months, I would say, or the first month. And then it started to change into a different company, I suppose. And that started to change. A lot of Elon's leadership teams from other places came in and started to kind of, you know, make changes and I guess, work with the remaining leadership team from Twitter. And that was not very, like, we didn't know what was happening. It wasn't transparent. It wasn't like before where, there would be all hands or anything like that. And so, really, I think everyone just who was left just tried to pick up the pieces and continue doing as much good work as they could. That was it, really. Like, what else could you do? You just keep going, you keep trying to contribute and trying to make an impact. Those in sales kept trying to support their clients and answer questions that they maybe didn't have the answers to. It was very, very challenging, and it continued. It got even more challenging, I think, when things turned and changed to X, and then Elon. He obviously has a certain way of like communicating, which is off,
Yes.
off, right? Like you can't predict what he's going to say, and um, you know, advertisers like it was a crazy time.
Or like you get up in the morning and then you hear something about your company that you didn't know about. And it's like, well, how do I carry that into the office this morning? Like nothing formally has been communicated to me, but you hear this and that being said about Twitter. I mean, that like you said, that kind of chaos. That's
That was
not
every day.
that was
That
every
was
day. Like,
yeah.
and did you learn a lot about how to be resilient though? To really kind of like I was part of I shouldn't say me, I make it seem like I'm a bigger deal than I was, but I was at a company where I'll just say it, the old Astral Media when Bell bought them.
Mhm.
And there was a tremendous amount of uncertainty at that point. And I'll say there were some points where it was very difficult coming into work. But at the same time, too, I learned to be a lot more resilient because you can go to other companies, you can hear other rumors, especially if you're at big companies, other media companies like to pick on them as well, too. And I felt that it made me a little more resilient, where it's just kind of like, I'm paid to do this. I'm not paid to listen to the noise. I'm just going to keep focusing on this. But maybe I keep one eye on what might be out there. Cause again, you got to look out for number one. Like, did you find you were in survival mode? That's what I should be asking at that point. Cause
Mhm.
your whole career was all about growth, growth, growth. And at some point, you were kind of like, I don't know how much further I can go with this company. I don't know how much further I want to go with this company. So, and like you said, you've got a kid at home. So you've got to be thinking about other responsibilities. Did you find that you swapped to survival mode then when this was happening?
Definitely. And I do think that it gave me the ability to navigate change and to think about change in a very different way. Like I've never been one to be afraid of change. Like if anything, it was exciting to me. It was something that as I told my career story, that I would actually chase. It was something that was really exciting. And so I remember one of the things that I did at the time. So I ended up moving into a kind of more senior leadership position, a global lead position. And one of the things that I really wanted to do was continue as best as I could to be transparent and to communicate all that I could, which was, fairly limited. I wasn't privy to any of the much more senior conversations, but I remember saying to my team a lot, like, we don't get to control so much of what's going on, right? Like so much we don't know, so much is happening outside of our control, and we may never really know what's happening. And we ultimately as well, when you think about it from a business perspective, like we're not entitled either, really, to know anything. We had just gotten very used to being in a lovely open culture where the core values of the company were very open and transparent. And this new company, it wasn't the same values. The values had shifted. And so I remember I would always say to myself as well as to my team, who do you want to be? Because that's what you control. Who do you want to be in this? So you can either be somebody who struggles. I mean, we're always going to be someone that struggles, but you can either be somebody who struggles and then your behavior is very rooted in that, right? And everything that you do becomes as a result of your circumstances, or you become intentional and you remember who you want to be from a values led perspective. And so for me, I wanted to be a leader who was open. I wanted to be a leader who was candid and clear as best I could about, what the expectations were on our team and how to meet them, and, things that helped me in terms of how to navigate the uncertainty. And that's what I leaned into, is just, what can I control in this moment? Okay, I can control how I show up. And that was it.
Some bit of advice that I received, probably from a mutual boss. Did you work with Brad Furtney when you were at Twitter? Yes.
Yes, I did.
Brad Furtney gave me he was one of the people that gave me my first paid role ever in media when I was at CBC. And I remember once he said this to me. I was working late and he came out to make small talk with me when I was working late. I don't know how we got into it, but he just said, Vic, always remember that you're the only one in charge of your career. And I always say that to myself when I get into those moments that you mentioned there, where it's like, okay, there's a lot of chaos going on. Sure, I can show up and do exactly what I'm supposed to do, But if I want out, that's on me. I
Yeah.
I made the choice to work in an industry, in a country where there's a lot of opportunity. It's up for me to find that. I can't sit here and wait for it, or let me or be defined by my pain or my misery that, again, I'm inflicting on myself. And a lot of people don't realize that they're inflicting it on themselves by sitting there and taking it.
Yeah. Oh my God, Brad. I'm sure he's probably said similar to me over the years. Yeah, and I know that like one of the reasons why I eventually left was because I did feel like the team that I was on at the time, it was still the product specialist team, but it was very uncertain. Like it was very difficult to make an impact because the way that the structure had changed was so dramatic that like in order to have an impact, like we just didn't have that power, we didn't have that control. There wasn't really a product team that we could work with meaningfully. There wasn't really anyone left. And so we worked with engineering very closely. And they tried their best too, but they had conflicting priorities. And so it was very, very difficult to try and make an impact to support sales and engineering slash product. It was almost, I mean, I would say nearly impossible to do. And so it was at that point where I was like, I can't do much more. Like I've stayed as long as I can to steer through the uncertainty, to be there for the team as best as I could. Um, to be some sort of like, I suppose, sense of longevity, like bringing a bit of longevity for people. And there was just very little I could do after that. It wasn't challenging in a fun way. It wasn't challenging in a growth way. It was just, I don't know if anyone is going to be able to make an impact. Like it was very difficult the way that it was structured. Could be different now. Like maybe they've changed it around, but at the time it was just the way that it was just too difficult to make an impact. And that's so important to me to be able to feel like I'm contributing and that I'm doing and growing and that I'm, you know, having some sort of like impact on the business that I'm working on, especially having been in sales for so long. So that was really what I suppose made me decide, okay. And it was a good run. 10 and a half years, great run.
That's a great run.
Yeah.
So let's cap off your Twitter X career. You had a series of promotions. If anyone listening to this is going for that next role in their company, they don't want to leave. They see that they can add more value, and they want to move up one spot. What advice would you give them?
Yes. It's funny. I was thinking about this in your last question. So a lot of people, women particularly, tell ourselves this myth, which is my work should speak for itself. And that is just not true. It is not. I have been someone that believed that. And I've also been a manager where I've seen people, be able to articulate their contributions and the impact that they're making, and I've seen the impact that that then has on their career and on my own. Like I figured it out, I suppose, over the years. It is a professional responsibility of yours to figure out how to advocate for yourself, how to speak about your achievements, how to articulate the value that you bring to the company. You have to be able to do that because nobody is going to do it for you. And if you don't, and if you say my work will speak for itself, well, then you're just leaving it to the wind. You're not taking any agency, you're not taking any control. So my advice would be to always make sure that you have a running tally of what you are bringing to that company and be able to articulate it in a way that demonstrates your unique contribution.
Was that something you had to train yourself on as you went through your career? Because success in sales is quantifiable. And I imagine you sat in a number of meetings where they put the leaderboard up. And I mean, it looks different at every company, but it's the same across the board where they've got people ranked as to what they brought in. And I mean, it's very hard to not look at that and go, huh, how are people not talking about me when I'm not in the room?
Yeah. But even in sales, the expectation is that everyone is hitting quota. So you have to have something to differentiate yourself. And
That
it's going to
very good
be,
point. Yes.
or if it's like, if the company isn't doing so well, it's no one's reaching quota. So what's going to help you stand out? And what helped me stand out over the years was I always looked for extra things that I could do to, have a sense of contribution. So because I had such an interest in learning and development, I always put my hand up, for any different types of, processes or trainings, or like I used to go to San Francisco and train new hires. In sales, which was so fun. And it was just like something that I really enjoyed doing. But it was also an example of how I, went maybe above and beyond in terms of wanting to support the company and make myself stand out. And there was a good few of those examples, and everyone has them, right? Everyone has their own kind of way that they can stand out and be seen differently. But we are responsible for our own personal brands and reputations within the company and who we want to be what we want to be known for.
Yes. And if you don't control your brand, someone else will control it for you.
Absolutely.
Okay, so bringing things full circle, where did the idea for up-level coaching and consulting come from?
So the name is a combination of, obviously upskilling, right? Like, growing and developing your skill set and things like that, which is obviously all part of what coaching is, professional development and that. But really, it's actually a nod to my love of gaming. So it's about going,
Nice.
yeah. So it's like leveling up in my head. I think about it when I'm like in a game.
Well, I'm thinking about like the green Mario one-up mushroom right now.
Exactly.
That's
Like the kind of ding, that
yep.
like sound. Yeah. Yeah. And the satisfaction that you get from it.
There is some instant gratification from hearing that sound. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so what gap did you see in the market that you thought, okay, you know what? All the experience I've accumulated here, I feel like I could really do a lot of good, and I can turn it into a career where I have way more authorship over myself and my future than I did before.
Yeah. I think I suppose in what I'm doing right now, which is building out a kind of a sales coaching framework, and I should say that I'm kind of doing this somewhat part time. I'm kind of exploring what my next move is going to be. So in a very like kind of transitionary time at the moment, but in building out my coaching practice, what really compels me, I suppose, is a lot of traditional training that I've experienced in my career, particularly sales training, is on behavior modification, right? It's like, just change the behavior, just be more disciplined, just do it, like, just hustle, change. You need to want it and all the rest. Whereas what I actually think, based on the training and the kind of the studies that I've done, is we have the ability to be able to change how we think about the behavior, what we believe about ourselves and our capabilities and our potential. And actually, if you change that, then the behavior changes naturally itself. And so I think it's a much more sustainable way of approaching growth, change, um, any kind of development that you want to do. It's easier, it feels better, and it's all about really just shifting how you think and see yourself in the world.
And part of this journey was going back to school. You alluded to it, that you did your master's degree. At what point did you realize that you wanted to do a master's degree? And how did that program fill some of the knowledge gaps that you needed filled in order to launch your company?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to do the masters. I think it came up when, everything was changing with Twitter. And I was thinking to myself, okay, work is very chaotic at the moment. It's challenging. I'm not getting like my needs met in the sense of like the learning and development that I normally would enjoy. And so I thought to myself, what a great time actually to start a master's program. And so that's kind of what the timing was rooted in. And I had done coach training, I had done my accreditation, but there was something about the academic kind of theoretical underpinnings of coaching that I was very drawn to. I'm a big reader, I'm into philosophy, I'm into the meaning of things. And so it was just, I suppose, in a way kind of natural that I would be drawn to the coaching psychology of it, and like why do we do, like, why is coaching so effective? Like, it's so effective. And we even see people who are trained therapists actually retraining or bringing in coaching into their specialties because it's so effective in supporting people to change and to reach their goals. And so I was just very curious about that, and I wanted to understand why. And that was what the master's program gave me.
Was it course based? Was there also a dissertation attached to it as well?
Yep,
What
there
wh-
was.
what was your dissertation on?
Confidence.
Oh, geez. What was the formal name of the dissertation then, or was it literally just confidence?
No, it was an interpretative phenomenological approach or analysis into executive coaches and their support of confidence in their clients, or something like that.
Was your research a lot of, I guess, first person interview based?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, that you must have learned so much from that.
Oh, it was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah. And all my people in my study were Canadian.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. So it had a
Yeah.
nice
It's
Canadian
worked out that
focus
way.
to it.
Yeah.
Perfect. So let's just close off on your company for a second. So day one to what it looks like now. How has it changed and how have you changed as the leader of the company in the face of it?
How has it changed? Great question. It's interesting. I think entrepreneurship is a very different challenge. There's a ton of uncertainty, and there's a lack of structure and routine. And, it can be very easy to just chase after the next thing that you might want to achieve. And so what I have found is it's very interesting how your old training comes back. Like I I've noticed now that I always do like a post quarter review. I always look ahead to the next quarter. I set myself strategic goals. What is it that I want to achieve? But also, like, really importantly, looking back and seeing what was achieved in the previous quarter as well. So, just trying to bring a sense of rigor, I think, into any kind of entrepreneurial exploration has been helpful for me. I've done a lot of relationship, like it's been wonderful like creating relationships through this business. I mean, that's probably been the most enjoyable part. The clients, I launched a group program recently in July. I've launched a podcast that's kind of part of
Plug,
um
plug, plug the podcast. We can't just let it
yeah,
go right there. No, no, no. It's the 10-minute shift.
it's the 10-minute shift, and it's 10 minutes. It can be 9, it can be 11, but never really goes over 12. And I chose that because I am very impatient and I can't bear to listen to anything super long. And it was also it was inspired by my love of voice notes, which I don't think is as popular in Canada, but we do so many voice notes in Ireland. Like, we don't text anymore, we just send each other voice notes.
Really? So just like little pre-recordings.
Yeah, just I like talk into my phone, into WhatsApp, and I just send it to my friends, and then they just listen to it, and then they voice note me back. Like, that's how we communicate. And I actually have gotten some of my Canadian friends into it, so they voice note me now. But it's not. I don't. I understand from them that like not everyone is using it, but it's really popular in Ireland and England, and so it was inspired by that, like this voice note that you might do to a friend, and the basis of it is it's a perspective shift in 10 minutes or less. So whatever topic, like I talk about your identity and how that relates to the work that you do, or I talk about fear or creativity, or that, I talked earlier about how to tolerate uncertainty and like what that means and why it's so important. That was a perspective shift in 10 minutes. So just little kind of snackable nuggets of maybe coaching psychology, I suppose I would call it.
And if anyone listening or watching this wants to get in touch to learn more about Uplevel, how can they do it?
So they can go to uplevelme.com. So that's my website. They can connect with me on LinkedIn, and they can catch me on, the social channels as well. I'm Hey Coach Amy.
Perfect. All right. You ready for rapid fire questions? Let's bring it home.
Let me check. Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm telling
Yes,
you,
I'm.
this is the hardest part for everyone. So let's start first with the campaign you're most proud of, which once was described to me as you're asking me to pick my favorite child.
Yes, that is a very challenging one. I didn't pick one that I worked on, but I picked one that resonated with me deeply, and that was Bell Let's Talk. The ones over the years that I just found were a really great celebration of vulnerability, which I love.
Your favorite movie.
A League of Their Own.
If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
I gave this a lot of thought. So it would be Elizabeth Moss in Mad Men channeling Peggy Olson, but Peggy Olson after she, like at the end.
That is very specific.
Yeah.
All right. And my follow-up question to that, if we were to make that movie, what would we call it?
Enough.
Your favorite book?
Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. It's an absolute cracker and big magic.
Absolutely, because we threw it out there early on. We have to drop it again.
Yeah.
Okay, your favorite song?
Oh God, favorite song. Right now, I'm loving anything from Les Mis. I love Wicked. I loved the movie. So probably something from there.
So a lot of musicals and show tunes you're in too.
Mhm.
Okay, the best advice you have ever received.
Let yourself be seen.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would you say?
I would say that let yourself be seen, but also focus on what lights you up. It's going to guide you, and don't worry so much about what other people think of you because they're so focused on themselves.
My signature closing question, if you weren't in media and marketing, what would you be doing and why?
I would be a teacher, and I think it's because similar to me being a coach, I love to help people learn.
And we're going to end things right here. Amy, this has been a fantastic chat. Thank you so much for stopping by today.
Thanks, Victor.